everyone, and welcome to our Well Learning Hub video. And we're really excited because we're developing some further resources for you so you can learn more about ministry with children, young people and families. And this is one of the things that we hope will be useful to you. And I'm really thrilled because I'm at the home of Andrea Harrison. Thank you so much, Andrea, for letting us come and film today.
Well, thank you for coming.
It's been a huge amount of fun. And I wonder if you would just like to introduce yourself to the audience so that we know who you are.
Yeah. Well, my name's Andrea, you've just said, and I work for the Salvation Army. My job title is Godly Play Enabler. So I help anyone who really wants to use Godly Play in whatever context in their discovery, really, of how it might work. I do training for them as well, but I use Godly Play in my local school and at the Anglican church I attend with children.
So you have, I know, a lot of experience with Godly Play over a long period of time, and so we've come today so that we can learn a little bit more about some new resources that have been created. And so tell us, what is it that we're going to be talking about today?
Okay, yeah. Well, it's 2018 now. This book, Stories of God at Home, A Godly Play Approach, was published in the US, and it's written by Jerome Berryman, who's the author of Godly Play. But this is, the emphasis on this is actually telling a story in your family setting, but actually, rather than in Godly Play, the person who tells the story, then just asking some wondering questions that people respond to. This time, the person who tells the story actually takes part in it a bit. So we've got some very simplified Godly Play scripts in the book for families to use, and we've got some materials here that facilitate the telling of that story. So, and they're in these beautiful little boxes that you can keep at home.
I know that when you showed these to me originally, that they were beautiful when you were opening them up, and there was something really lovely just about the fact that they're made of wood, and they're just really neat little boxes. So
they're designed as well to be small so that you can keep them at home, and that you can get them out and share them with your family. And then perhaps they're not too big to keep somewhere, that if actually someone in your family wants to look at it another time, they can get it out. So, yeah.
So this is all part of Godly Play's approach to nurturing spirituality and supporting particularly children to explore faith and what they believe. So how does this differ? If people may or may not know something about Godly Play, how does this differ from perhaps what's already been done?
Well, the Godly Play approach is, as you say, about nurturing spirituality, supporting it. And a Godly Play story typically is done with perhaps 15 people, children. And then, as I said before, there are some wondering questions, and then there's time to go and respond on your own to those wondering questions, and that's facilitated with lots of sort of materials. And then you come back together as a community. So there's a sort of process there. This is far simplified. Not only the length of the script, as it were. If you are familiar with Godly Play, you would recognise in these scripts something much shorter. But that actually, if you were telling the story, you are part of it in a way. I guess facilitator isn't the best word, because actually you're leading it, but actually you're part of the wondering that happens at the end. And it's part of, and perhaps a quote here is good, it's really part of helping you to integrate the stories of your family with the stories of God. So, shall I give you an instance of that?
Yes, do. That sounds
So this, for instance, is the story of creation, and I'll lay it out in a minute for you. From Genesis.
Yes.
And it talks about God's gift to us. But it might be as a family that you went to the park in the afternoon, or you went out for a walk, and you enjoyed some time literally in God's creation. And perhaps when you go back and have your tea, you might tell this story, and you might wonder together where did you see light in your afternoon together, or where was the water? What did you enjoy about God's creation? And you talk about that as a family at the end. So God's story becoming part of the story of what you did together as a family, perhaps that day. So it's integrating it. Jerome writes quite a lot about that builds resilience for your family. And of course we haven't got this terrible separation then, have we? Of this is what we do in church, this is that story, and this is our story. There's a sort of interweaving there.
And I suppose from what I certainly learned through Homegrown, that for a lot of families perhaps there's a sense that maybe we don't have the confidence as parents or carers to do this. Maybe we feel that what we should be doing at home needs to look like church somehow. And actually what it feels to me, I think just from what you've been saying about that sense of storytelling, which actually for many families is really a big part of life together. So whenever families get together, you're talking about something that happened in your day, you're talking about maybe a funny experience on holiday. And I know that in my family there are those stories that you keep returning to because they're full of comedy, or everybody just remembers what they were doing at that point. So it feels to me that makes so much sense for a family to also incorporate actually what we believe and think about God and faith as part of that longer narrative of who we are growing together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the sort of idea behind that. And I wrote about this a little bit, that I used to tell my sons on their birthday the story of the day they were born.
Okay.
Because my own husband, his parents died quite early, he's an only child, and there was no one who knew the story. And so I thought I would tell them, because as they got older they became more resistant to hearing that. But I wanted to be sure that they knew that story for themselves. So that would be an example of some of their history, but actually that over time this becomes part of their shared story.
Yeah. And I think one of the things which I talk us through perhaps a little bit about how you might want to approach doing it then, and if you're going to use one of the story boxes, what might that look like? And you talked a little bit, but perhaps a little bit more detail.
The things that you need are in the box. So the idea is that you'd keep this somewhere, perhaps on a shelf in the kitchen, where you gather as a family, and that one person would perhaps bring this to the table and open the box and lay out the materials. In this case it's some felt, and there's some plaques here, and would tell a very simple story about that material, but that at the end say, I wonder, and that you have that as a conversation. But at the end of the time, you have as a family a way of concluding that time and saying, well, perhaps thank you God for that story, and then you put that away and you get on with your other things. The book actually talks about using storybooks as well to become part of that family story. So Velveteen Rabbit is one of that actually perhaps you keep these stories with those things too. So it might look like that, but it's very adaptable, I think.
Yes.
I think perhaps from our perspective in the UK, the book itself might seem a bit like a programme.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure in the UK we're far less programme driven.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, when I first saw it, I thought there are so many ways that you could adapt this, and there would be no one saying you can't do it like this. It's whatever's right for your family.
Yeah, and it really wouldn't matter who the people are in your family. So if they're, maybe if you're a grandparent with grandchildren, if I'm a single parent, if I am maybe actually really helpfully for families who have adopted or are fostering, to help just give that bigger sense of being part of this family, that it really can work whatever kind of family you are. So that seems magnificent.
Absolutely, and absolutely. And if you're in a church setting, perhaps where you only have 2 or 3 children, maybe you think of yourself as that's your family unit in this place, and maybe we keep that for that time. I mean, I think there's also a way you could use this if you were perhaps visiting a family, to actually tell them. And there's a story of the Good Shepherd, which it might just begin conversation. I mean, I can think of all sorts of ways that you could use it. Yeah.
So that flexibility is really key.
I think that's key.
That although you've got the resource, actually there can be multiple ways that you could be using this across church life. And
yes.
So that's only limited to your imagination.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And I find that just like when I showed you, that actually it's I've got some ideas. But the minute I show someone else, they go, oh, guess what? You could use it. Could you use it like that? And there's no limit on that. There's no ceiling on that. It's, you know, however you could see the possibility. And because you said something about sometimes families feel, oh, they've got to replicate church at home. Well, you're not perhaps doing that at church. So actually it could be your home thing. So there's no one thinking, that's how it's done in church. No, this is how you do it. Part of your family's story.
Yeah. I know you mentioned, for instance, that maybe a chaplain would like to use it. I thought that was a really fascinating suggestion.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what stories are available then? That would be great.
So I've mentioned creation, and then there's the story, which is a parable. And if you know anything about Godly Play, the parables actually come in gold boxes. So this is a gold box, and
it looks
inside,
beautiful,
doesn't it? And there's this sense of anticipation of what can possibly be in here, and it's the parable of the Good Shepherd, and so we've got the felt materials here that we lay out and we play with. You know, what could be happening here, and then we've got some little figures, and this is the figure of the Good Shepherd. I don't want
the sheep round the shoulders.
Yes, it's a bit of a spoiler if I show you too much, so I'm not going to show you too much. But it's a story that really can help people explore what might be difficult in their life. You know, what's good? Where's the good green grass in your life, and where's cool water? But actually, where are the difficult and dark places? And how, as we are a family, how do we approach those things? So really, you are really tackling big existential issues here.
It got very deep very quickly.
It did, but in a very simple way. You're telling a story about the Good Shepherd with little bits of felt. But you, as your family, perhaps can remember some of those good times and reflect back on when it was difficult. What were the things that helped us get through those difficult things, and what helped us or hindered us, really?
Yes, of course.
So it might be
beautiful
reflections. So there's that. There's they are, aren't they? They're just the very feel of them.
Yes,
it's delightful.
Exactly.
So you could imagine that someone might actually want to get this out if you kept it somewhere central for your family and play with it. And make that meaning on their own without perhaps talking about it. So
that's a parable story.
That's a parable story. Okay. We've got the creation story. This is a story really, it's called Pentecost.
Yeah.
Here we see a red flame. But rather like the creation story, it's a series of plaques here.
Okay.
And these tell us story, the post-resurrection stories when Jesus appeared up until Pentecost. So we've got that one. So that's quite specific, I think.
Illustrated as well. Lovely images to look at.
They're Peter Pruitt's paintings that have been made small. But I think, you know, in a particular time of the year, obviously, after Easter, you could use that. In the run-up to Easter, in Lent, we've got, again, the one we've had made. And we've not had them all made from this book, because we felt that some of them in a UK context probably wouldn't work so well, but these were the ones we chose. These are the stories for Lent, the faces of Easter, but beginning with Jesus' birth, and taking us through his childhood and baptism, his time in the desert, his work in healing, the Last Supper, and then we have this little plaque where obviously we have the crucifixion, and on the other side the resurrection. But these are two pictures that you can't separate. You can't have one without the other. So you could use that as a family as you prepare to think about Easter.
And I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about that particular story, so people can you can find that video as well and watch Andrea talking a bit more about the Lent box.
Okay,
That's lovely.
So we've got that one, and then finally, we're videoing this in January, so this feels a bit funny because this is the run up to Christmas. But again, this, you know, we were thinking that families have lots of traditions now about what they do in the run up to Christmas. Of course, we have Advent calendars and chocolate, but your church might knit nativity figures that go around your village or your town. This could become part of your family's preparation. So not only for this one do we have a little piece of felt to lay the pictures out, which have got recognisably an Advent wreath with the different number of candles as you get nearer Christmas, but also this absolutely...
This is my favourite part.
Beautiful.
This is beautiful.
Little Bethlehem, because we're travelling to Bethlehem in Advent, and there we are. Let's slot that in.
See, I was thinking I would pop a little electric tea light in the middle of that.
Absolutely. So, as you tell that story, we're pointing to Bethlehem, we're getting ready for that time. So in that set. And the sets, you can buy the individual parts separately.
Okay.
So,
that's important to know.
Yeah.
And if I'm watching this and I'm a paid worker or volunteer with a church, and I maybe meet families through the course of what I do during a week, where would you say might be a good starting point if I want to introduce them to exploring faith in this way?
Yeah.
What might be the kind of things that I could do to encourage them to engage?
Well, I think if you can, if you have some budget to get one of these boxes and you'd need the book, but actually to gather some parents and just share a story with them in the way that's described, in that it's described as storying together. Because I think then, if you felt diffident, if you were a parent and you thought, no, this is something I can't do, you would actually very soon realise, well, actually, that is actually really quite straightforward.
Yeah.
And I can do it in my own way to fit with my family. So I think I'd take some time to show people. And actually, maybe this looks sort of quite enticing. Yeah. Or you perhaps pick a part of the church year and say, okay, we are getting ready for Easter. You know, so perhaps this is something you could do in that time. So,
and there's something I think that a lot of churches would really benefit from, that idea that actually it enables us to wonder together. So it's not about having the right answers, that we're posing questions that you need to have really extensive Bible knowledge to understand and to know how to respond. It really is genuinely about wondering, and I think for lots of people that could be very refreshing to hear.
You haven't got to have the right answers or no, because you are literally as a family wondering about this together. Well, what do we perhaps like in here, or what's important? And perhaps those times when we might think, oh, that felt like something bigger and beyond me, but actually, why did I talk about that? Or does that seem a bit silly? Maybe in just your wondering together, say, well, actually, when I was there, it suddenly seemed that I could see everything perhaps more clearly, or I just suddenly got this feeling. No one's going to try and then limit that or explain that, but actually it's just time to share that. So it might give confidence to talking what might be a spiritual experience. You might not know, but you might give you some confidence to, in time, just say that. I mean, someone else might say, well, I've had those feelings.
Yeah.
But I didn't know, how
they don't have the language necessarily to describe it. So it does mean that people can engage in whatever way feels comfortable and right for them.
Absolutely, yes.
As we kind of try and bring our conversation to a close, because I know that you and I would be happy to talk about this all day long, Where can people get hold of the resources? That's probably the big question on a lot of people's minds.
Yes.
So where do they need to go to? Perhaps could you just tell us a web address or something?
Yes. So St Michael's Workshop in Bowthorpe, Norfolk, make the Godly Play materials, and they've made these. They're a really interesting community. They're a community of older, largely older people who have got various disabilities. But this work gives them genuine paid employment, and they make everything absolutely beautifully. They're not particularly cheap because of that, and also everything they use will have been looked at in terms of its sustainability and it's ethically sourced. So you can buy individual elements, but perhaps you know, you're looking probably about £50. So it is an outlay. Once you've got it, you've got it. It's not going to become redundant in any way. It's not going to fall apart. They're made to be played with, made to be lost.
They're really robust.
They're really robust, and you can see they're beautiful. So, but St Michael's Workshop in Bowthorpe are the supplier, and as I say, they will sell you the individual elements that you can assemble it yourself.
Andrea, thank you so much.
It's all right.
This has been so lovely, and it's wonderful to know that there is a resource of this kind out there for people to use in all kinds of different ways, so that they can explore their own story as part of God's bigger story with them as well. So thank you for your time, and we really hope that you found that informative, and check out some of our other films that are available on the Well Learning Hub.